Good evening, welcome to the Next IAS YouTube channel. Today we will discuss 5 articles. First 4 are prelims oriented and 5th is mains oriented. So first article is all about right to equality. Second article is about semi-cryogenic engine which was recently launched by the ISRO. Third is about space debris loss. Fourth is about India's first fabrication unit. And fifth article, that is mains oriented, is all about the trade war. Let us begin. So let us discuss the first article, that is related to Indian Express newspaper, right? And they have started a very good series on the various aspects of the Supreme Court decision that become the landmark judgment, right? And the article says when SC defines equality in union workers case, right? So before discussing about right to equality, we will have to discuss the various facets of the right, right? So or various generation of the right. So what are the generations? So basically there are 3 generations of the rights. First is the first generation right, which deals about the civil and the political right, right? What they discuss, civil and political right. Second generation is all about the socio-economic right. What are those? Socio-economic right. And the third generation rights are all about collective right that we enjoy as a society. What we enjoy? We enjoy as a society, right? So this is about the basic information of the right. And what we are discussing is the first generation of the civil or political right, right? Under which we discuss article 14, right? That is the right to equality. Now when we talk about right to equality, it is mentioned in article 14 to article 18 of the Indian Constitution. You might be knowing, right? What it says? So basically the right to equality as mentioned in article 14 has 2 facets. What are those? It talks about A, that is the equality before the law, and second is the equal protection of law. We will discuss in short while what are the differences between both, but let us try to understand what article 14 itself says. It says that the state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of law within the territory of India. It means we can ensure the protection of article 14 in India but not in Bangladesh or Pakistan, right? Hope it is clear to you, right? Now as we discussed, there are 2 facets of the article 14. Will give the example of both the facets. If you talk about the equality before the law, so in the political language it is considered a negative right. It is a negative connotation and it is inspired from the Constitution of the USA, that is the United States of the America. What it says? It basically prohibits state in discriminating to citizens, right? At the same time, the equal protection of law doctrine is inspired from the British procedures because they do not have the constitution per se and they are positive in nature. What is the meaning of positive? Means they entitle something, right? We will discuss what are the entitlement given by the both the things, right? So the equality and equity, there are 2 things and it is well defined in this image. If you are able to see it, just try to see there are 3 persons, right? One is the tall person, second is the medium height person, third is the short height person. If there is a equality among all these things, what will happen? There will be negative discrimination with that person which is short in height because it is absolute equality. That is again bad for any constitution. It is not in the good spirit. However, the equity provides affirmative action from the state. For example, we have reservation, right? Reservation, what they do? They provide equity. They means they provide the equal footing to all, right, to enjoy certain rights. That is the basic difference between the equality and equity. And in modern times, we should prefer equity before the equality because equity is fair in nature, right? Hope it is clear to you, right? So what article 14 guarantees? It is the similarity of the treatment and not identical treatment. Here it is the similarity of the treatment but not the identical treatment because the different people are given the different footing, right? That is the basic idea behind the equity and equity concept, right? So why we are discussing this right to equity? Because this right to equity and the interpretation of it is inspired from the case of Bengal. What happened in the Bengal just after the independence? Few Europeans were killed, right? Few Europeans were killed by some workers in the Damdam area, right? In the Damdam area. Now what happened? By the force that the people were European, the accused were treated differently, and that was basically became bone of contention, which led to the debate around this entire article that is written in the this article very beautifully, that is related to the state of Bengal versus Anwar Ali Sarkar case 1952. Why it is relevant? Because this ruling is the first to establish the reasonable classification. What it did? It led to the reasonable classification test, which declared that a law can provide an exception to the right to equality and apply it to the specific class of the people. This is the basic idea behind discussing the entire article. Hope it is clear to you, right? Now let us try to understand the different dimensions that is related to the right to equality. They are basically state tend to treat unequals differently. That is basically defined in this image beautifully, right? This is all about the right to equality doctrine, and the same doctrine was discussed in this article. So it is requested to you all to kindly go through the article and read about more about the right to equality doctrine, right? That's all on this article. Now let us try to solve the MCQ. It is displayed in the screen. Kindly solve this. Next article is about semi-cryogenic engine. So why it is in news? So basically ISRO conducted a crucial test for semi-cryogenic engine, which is key to future launches, right? So what is the backdrop? Again, we have tested a cryogenic engine, right? And it is relevant for the science and technology. So before going to the topic, let us try to understand what is meaning of the cryogenics, right? So what is meaning of the cryogenics? Cryogenics simply means that is the production and the behavior of material at very low temperature. Low temperature, how material behaves and are produced are known as the cryogenics, right? For example, at ultra low temperature, for example, in the tune of -150 to -273 degree C, action of molecules are different, right? Largely they stop interacting with each other, resulting into the conservation of the energy. And this simple technology or simple methodology is used to deal with the various aspects of the cryogenics, and one of the aspect is building the cryogenic engines, right? So what cryogenic engine deals? It is more efficient because it provides more thrust, plus it is less cost. That is the cost effective as well, right? In the same tune, what we have ISRO, which is known for its cost efficiency, have done a new test that we call power head test article, that is PHTA, in which we have tried to achieve this semi-cryogenic stage of the rocket. Now before going towards the cryogenic engines, I will try to give you a context how the ban on India was blessing in disguise. What happened in 1992? India was in talking terms with Russia, our all-time friend, to provide the technology related to the cryogenic engines, right? Cryogenics. But at that time, the US was not supporting us and they objected on it, given the dual nature of the technology that can be exploited by any country, that is the military use as well as the civil use. And at that time MTCR was in application, hence the idea was dropped by the Russia. But however, since I said that it was working as a blessing in disguise, what happened? Next year itself, in 1993, we have started developing our own cryogenic technology, right? So we have funded our own institution in 1993, in the tune of 280 crores to develop cryogenic engine, right. Hence, accordingly, we have developed the cryogenic engine as well. So, if we have the cryogenic engines with us, why we are urging to develop the semi-cryogenic engines? For that, we will have to understand how this cryogenic rocket works. So, basically, if I draw a rough diagram of a rocket, don't laugh on my drawing skills, but it is what is it is? It is the rocket, right? And basically, a rocket before entering to the or exiting our atmosphere faces two type of the drag. One drag is basically produced by the gravity, right, and second drag is basically produced by the atmosphere. And to surpass both of the drags, they need certain kind of the energy, right, and this kind of the energy is provided by whom? None other than the cryogenic technology or cryogenic rockets, right. What they happen? First, they defy the third Newton's gravity. Based on the Newton's third law, a basic thrust is applied which pushes the rocket upwards, and once they reaches a certain level, they need to escape our atmosphere. Again, at this is just basically generally the cryogenic engines are started or the steps are started. I am giving you a very simplification of the entire process, right. That is all about the cryogenic. So, why we are using the cryogenic technology? So, the cryogenic rocket uses basically either cryogenic fuel or cryogenic oxidizer, right. So, what happens? Storing cryogenic fuel as well as cryogenic oxidizers are quite costly, but it takes a lot of the effort to transport them towards the rocket. For that purposes, what we are doing? We are tweaking in terms of the fuel as well as the oxidizer. What we are doing? ISRO is using environment friendly and green propellant like liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, right. That is the kerosene based propulsion system, right. And in the same tune, what we are doing? What we are tweaking into the fuel as well as the oxidizer, and what we are doing? We are making kerosene more efficient by using a type of the kerosene that we call, it is written by the ISRO-scene, right, and name is also given by the what? ISRO itself. What it does? It basically it is designed to provide heavy lift capability to future space transportation like new generation launch vehicle NGLV. Why it is so? Because it is a most cost effective, second is efficient as well. That is why we are pushing towards the semi cryogenic stage, because cryogenic stage is bit costlier, right. Okay. What will it do? Semi cryogenic engine will help in increasing the payload capacity while maintaining the cost efficiency. That is the basic reason behind going towards the semi cryogenic engine kind of the development. Despite being the cryogenic, we have developed the cryogenic engines, still we are looking for the better and cheaper technology or the cost effective. That is all on the cryogenic technology. Now, let us try to solve the question that is given in the screen. Thank you. Now, we will discuss next article, that is space debris law. It came into the Hindu, right, and the news says when debris from space crashes to the earth, who is responsible? And it's very interesting article, right, which is overlapping with the issue of international importance as well as science and technology, right. Also, UPSC may ask various convention related to space debris and if India is signatory to the following of the convention or not, right. So, we will try to discuss the prelims relevant point only. Let us start. So, what happened recently in December 2024, a huge mass of 5 kg metal object fell in Kenya, right. Also, the similar kind of the incident was reported in the US and Australia, which led to the debate in case of the future damage caused by the space debris, who should be the responsible, right. In that context, we are discussing the entire article and we will discuss the various laws applicable to the space debris. Now, before discussing the space debris, let us try to discuss if there is any universally accepted definition of the space debris or not. like the terrorism, which don't have any universally accepted definition, the space debris also lacks any universal definition that defines it. However, the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, very important committee, that is the COPCUS, right, defines space debris as all man-made object, including fragments and elements of any satellite in Earth orbit or re-entering the atmosphere, that is defunct or that is non-functional. Okay? And the space debris is also known as the space junk. What is known? Space junk, right? Now, what led to the causes or what led to the space debris? Let us try to understand the various aspects of the space debris. A defunct satellite may result into what? A space debris, because it is no more functional and it can cause damages in case it is not in the right orbitation. The various rocket stages we have discussed. There are 3 stages of the rocket generally, and every stage is basically released from the rocket itself, and if it may lies into the atmosphere or the upper atmosphere, it may result into what? Space debris. Also, there can be fragmentation from the various satellite that can cause space debris. We have the example of the anti-satellite test done by the China. It led to the lot of space debris in the space. However, India also did ASAT, but it was quite a responsible kind of the thing, because we managed the space debris in beautiful manner. That's why Indian ISRO or Indian agencies are considered responsible and Chinese are not so responsible, right? So, these are the various aspects of the space debris. For example, explosion and collision also can result into the space debris. So, hope you got to know about the various causes behind the space debris. Now, what are the threats and why there is need to regulate the space debris? So, basically there are imminent collision risk, means one satellite or one rocket can collide with the space debris, resulting in the fragmentation, which led to the cascading effect that we also call Kessler syndrome. It is not related to any human biology, but it is related to what? Space, right? That is the collision between the debris can create cascading effect or domino effect. Also, it may impact communication and navigation, because it will jeopardize the functioning of the satellite. Also, it lead to the cost as well as it led to the safety risk, because it can result into the what? It will act like a bullet in the space. The space debris will act like bullet in the space, and it can damage humans if they are available, or for that matter anything that is available in the space. That also they led to the environmental hazard, given the fact that the cascading effect can result into the various kind of the explosion or implosion, right? Now, very important is the various treaty, that is for the again prelims point of view, very important. Now, let us try to understand the various treaty that deals with the space debris. So, there are largely 5 United Nations treaties to deal with the space activities. What are these? Let us try to understand, but you will have to very careful about India is being signatory to do all the 5 treaties, but ratified only 4, means we have signatured in principle, but we have not implemented it, right? The last one, that is the Moon Treaty, that we have signed but not ratified. We will discuss it in next few seconds, right? First is Outer Space Treaty, very important treaty. It came into force in 1967. What it is all about? So, it bans the sitting of weapons or sending of the weapons of mass destruction in space. For example, you are not supposed to do the nuclear implosion, explosion in the space, right? And majority of the nuclear state, for example, India, China, Russia, USA, etc. are supposed to carry the nuclear weapon, but we are restricted by not sending the nuclear weapon into the outer space. Okay, na? And also states bear responsibility for all national space activities, whether conducted by the government or private entities under this space treaty. Next is, and the second is the Rescue Agreement of 1968. We are discussing it in chronological order. What is it? It is an agreement on the rescue of astronaut and the return of the astronaut and return of the object launch in outer space. You might have seen the various scenes when the Russian astronaut are rescued by the NASA. Both the states are basically in virtual war, but when it comes about the outer space, both are friends. Why? Because of this treaty, that is the Rescue Agreement of 1968. Next is the Liability Convention of 1972, which deals mainly with the damages caused by the space object, and it is basically more focused about the space debris, right? It is more focused about the space debris, but however, since there is a lack of universal definition of the space debris, the state or non-state actor can escape this clause as well, right? Next is the Registration Convention of 1967, which is a convention on the registration of object launched into outer space. For example, India recently, is if sending nano satellite, or if the Japan is sending a satellite made totally of the woods, right? They have to register it like vehicle, we have to do the registration of the vehicle. The similar registration have to done under the registration of convention 1976. And finally is the Moon Agreement 1979. India has not ratified yet this agreement, right? It is an agreement governing the activities of the state on the moon and other celestial bodies. So hope the topic of the space debris for the prelims point of view is clear. You will have to discuss about the various treaties and convention, and if India is a party to any such kind of the treaty, you will have to take care of it. Similarly, the question is given in the screen. Just try to solve this question. Now let us try to discuss the next article, that is India's first Fab Unit. That is the theme of the entire article. The article came into the Indian Express News, right? What it says that there is an organization we call PSMC, which is actively bringing fab construction supplier from Taiwan to Dholera, right? So what is the relevance of this news? This is again relevant for the international importance as well as science and technology, right? Now let us try to discuss about the news. What happens? So India's first fabrication unit is being built, semiconductor fabrication unit is being built as Dholera. Dholera is in Gujarat, right? By whom? That is the one organization is there, Power Chip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. In sync with whom? Tata Electronics. They are building what? India's first commercial semiconductor fabrication plant at Dholera. However, already in Mohali, there is a fabrication unit for the semiconductor, but it is largely now old and defunct as well, right? And apart from this, as per the India Semiconductor Mission, we are making 4 more projects in order to build what semiconductor unit or Fab Unit that we call, and it is in tune with the Atmanirbhar Bharat. What is it in tune with the Atmanirbhar Bharat? What are they? Which are the companies? First, the Micron Technology of the US, Tata Group, Murugappa Group, and Kensen Semicon. These are the organizations which are making the semiconductor fabrication unit in India, right? And at different places. For example, in Assam they are also making the fabrication unit. But why this is important? Because it's the India's first official semiconductor fabrication unit. That is important of the Dholera, right? I hope you got the context why we are discussing this news, right? Okay. Now, before discussing about what is the various aspect of the semiconductor thing, let us try to understand what are the semiconductors. So basically, there are 2 type of the materials. One who are conductors, and second are who are the insulators, right? Conductors are conductors basically conduct electricity, right? And insulator basically don't conduct electricity. And in between the conductor and insulator, there is a semiconductor. It means they are half conductor and half insulator. There is a famous saying in army, Kaman Adhikari na nar na nari, or we have the Ardhanarishwar in our Indian mythology, Shiva and Parvati का, ठीक है ना, आपको पता होगा वो. So the semiconductor in layman language is basically Ardhanarishwar. It is neither complete conductor nor the insulator which is complete. So it is a Kamanadhikari, Nar Nari, right? Also, Taiwan leads the entire semiconductor industry of the world. Almost as per the data, 80% of the semiconductors are being in the Taiwan. Rest of the things now, after most imminent conflict that is next in pipeline between the China and Taiwan, world itself is trying to diversify. US is trying to make their own unit, Europe is trying to making their own unit, right? Accordingly, in India, we are trying to make our own semiconductor unit, right? So we have already discussed why they are unique. So they have unique ability to conduct electricity under certain conditions while acting as an insulator under other conditions. So they change their nature upon the condition of the thing. And whatever we are watching, I am writing on iPad, it is integrated with the semiconductor. You are watching it over the laptop or the mobile phone, it is also integrated with the semiconductor. And almost 25% of any electronic item conducts these semiconductors. That is the fabrication unit cost. Yeah. And what is the fabrication? Fabrication means giving shape to anything. It can be an iron. If we giving shape to the iron, it can turn to the sword. The similar thing, similar kind of the thing goes with the fab unit, where silicon and germanium are used to fabricate a kind of the material that we call semiconductor, right? Semiconductor. Now, what is the semiconductor significance? It is basically now omnipresent. What is the meaning of the omnipresent? It is basically universally present in most of the things that we see on daily basis. For example, our electronic devices, the EV that we use to travel, or the medical imaging technology that we call MRI, in the research or innovation, in the communications, in the military, the radar, they also uses the same. So basically it is very critical kind of the technology as well as the object that is the need of the future generation. That's why India is trying to build its own semiconductor fabrication unit, right? But what are the challenges? There are various challenges pertaining to the semiconductor unit. For example, there is a high initial cost. Also, I would like to give you an example that we are leaders in terms of the designing of the semiconductor, but we are not the leaders in terms of the manufacturing of the semiconductors. What we do? We design the semiconductors and it is manufactured in other countries, and we import these kind of the thing from those countries, leading to the huge cost on all these import bills, right? That's why we are trying to build those kind of the units. Again, these are the advanced technology, and advanced technology needs more research and development, and it is capital intense as well. Not only that, also we are in need of the skilled workforce. We need a skilled workforce, and we are having a various transfer of the technologies from the various countries, including the Taiwan. We are good friend with the Taiwan, right? Also, we have seen during the COVID-19, there was a disruption in terms of the supplying of these semiconductor units. That nudges Indian government to develop their own fab unit at various places, including in Dholera, right? And there are various hazards related to the extraction of silicon and germanium, which is base material for what? Fabrication unit, right? Now, we will discuss the various schemes that is related to the fab unit. First and foremost is India Semiconductor Mission, which was launched in 2021, under which the fab unit is being built in Dholera, right? Basically, what it deals with the setting of semiconductor fabrication unit or fab unit in India. It will encourage global semiconductor firm to invest in India. Also, it will develop design linked incentive, DLI, right? So there will be more design in terms of the fabrication unit. Also, second work done by the government of India is production linked incentives, right? So for the domestic chip manufacturer, we are giving 4 to 6% of the incentive for the manufacture of the fab unit. That's why, so that the people can invest in such kind of the technology. Also, there is a new scheme that we call SPACES. What is it? That is a scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electronic component and semiconductors, which supports electronic component and semiconductors, right? Now, what are the way forward on the semiconductor fab unit and what India should be doing? So, what first we need to develop chip ecosystem. For example, we need to develop the design capability as well as the manufacturing capacity. Not only manufacturing, but we will have to sell it as a end product, that is the, for example, mobile device or laptop. So, we need the entire ecosystem to deal with it. Also, as the challenge, we need to enhance R&D, that is the research and development in semiconductor unit. Also, we need to strengthen the connectivity so that from the buyer to the seller there should be a forward as well as the backward link, right? Also, we need to harness chip design expertise of the different countries or the institution, and we need to attract global investment because the entire work of the semiconductor fabrication unit is quite capital intense. That's why we need to have more FDIs in such kind of the units. That's all on the semiconductor mission. That is the India's first semiconductor fabrication unit being built in Dhorela. Now, let us try to solve these question that is given in the screen. Now, let us discuss our main topic, that is related to the trade war, right? What is the context and background of the news? So, basically US president announced that the US will impose a reciprocal tariff on India and other nation from April 2nd, 2025, right? So, that can lead to the trade war as well. That's why we are discussing this topic. We are not discussing the economic aspect of the tariffs, but we are discussing about the other aspect. For example, how it is leading to, it can lead to the recession, or it can lead to the disruption, or it can lead to the realignment in the world order, right? So, it is related to the international relation as well as the economy section of the UPSC syllabus, and the news came into the, we can see in both the Hindu as well as the Indian Express, right? So, basically what is the context? We will have to understand using the PYQ. It is displayed in the screen. You can see there are similar kind of the question asked in the previous or past year, right? So, you can see, so that's why this topic become quite important for the mains perspective. Also, those who are into the prelims this year, you can skip these topics. You can focus on the prelims more, right? It is more for student who will be appearing next mains, right? Now, what happened, as we know that President Trump announced the traffic on India, not from the 1st April, because if you watch, the Trump is quite dramatic as well, right? So, he says he's quite superstitious person, and 1st April is known for the April Fool, right? And he don't want the world to understand that the reciprocal traffic or the decision of the reciprocal traffic is what is a April Fool kind of the, call it prank, right? But it is in real term. That's why he will be imposing the reciprocal tariff from the 2nd April. It is also logic, good. So, first we will discuss how it will impact India, or then we will discuss what will the overall impact of the thing and how it can lead to the trade war, right? So, if you discuss, we will discuss the India-US trade relation. So, we have 130 billion trade relation with the US, right? And US export to India is around 42 billion, and Indian export to the US is around $85 billion. And if traffic will be imposed, it will lead to the loss of $7 billion to Indian economy, which will be a huge amount for an emerging country like India, right? And the most impacted industry or the sector is likely to be agriculture, right? Food sector, pharma, India being the pharma hub of the world, it will be impacted badly. And automobile sector, we supply cheap automobile or the cost effective automobile, I will rather say, to the world, right? So, it will impact these sector heavily. That's why it is quite relevant for the examination. And I will give you a context that on the 15th of Feb, we have already discussed this reciprocal tariff, right? Those who are not privy to the topic of the reciprocal traffic, you can watch the video of the 15th February, and then you can switch to the same topic, that is the today's trade war, because both are interconnected in nature, right? Now, as rightly said, if tariffs are not regulated properly, it can result into the trade war as well, right? If tariffs are not regulated, it will result into the tariff war, and that's why the news is more about the tariff war, right, or trade war. So what is trade war? A trade war occurs when nations impose tariffs or impose trade barriers against each other in retaliation for the preconceived economic harm or unfair trade practices. For example, we have seen in recent time that there was a trade war going on between the USA and China, two largest economy. The Huawei of China was banned by the USA, and USA and China also banned few of the products from the USA, right? They cited the security reason behind it, but ultimately the hidden layer behind it is the tariff war, right, or the trade war that we call, right, that started. So we discussed about the trade barrier. So trade barrier simply means a barrier imposed on the trade, and it can be of two types. First can be the tariff barrier, and second is the non-tariff barrier. Tariff barrier, the tariff imposed by the USA on any Indian product. For example, if you are exporting a pharma product to the USA and they are imposing like 10 or 20% of the tax on our product, it will be known as the what? Tariff barrier. And what are the non-tariff barrier? Non-tariff barrier are basically barriers, for example, phytosanitary measures. For example, if Alfonso of India is banned in the Europe because of presence of pesticide, it will be known as the non-tariff barrier. Again, I am giving you just a basic concept just to understand the things in better terms. It can be a license. For example, if you want to do any business in USA, you will need some sort of the license, or as rightly said by the USA president, that if someone want to do the business in the USA, they will have to make operational thing in the USA itself. They can't be a like a country can't be only exporting the things to the USA, but they should be establishing the unit in the USA itself, so that it can generate the job and other opportunity for the USA, right? I am giving you a context, right? Now the trade war is also related to a very interesting concept that we call weaponization of the trade. What is it? Basically, it refers to the strategic use of the trade policy as a geopolitical tool rather than purely economic measure. So tariff barrier, non-tariff barrier are purely economic barrier, but if we are using for the geopolitical use, it becomes the weaponization of the trade, right? And we have given the example of the Huawei or the other things as said by given in the example, right? It may also include economic sanctions, export control, supply chain restrictions, and currency manipulation, like China does this frequently, right? We have the recent example when a Russian gas supply to the Europe was stopped, and winter is coming, become quite a realistic scenario in the Europe, right? Because they are largely dependent on what? The gas supply from the Europe, and leading to the energy generation in their homes. But after the this Crimea annexation and after recent Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war, or that we call special action of the Russia on the Ukraine, basically Russia stopped the gas supply to the Europe. That resulted into quite a disruption. Or in the past, China stopped giving dairy product to the Australia, and Australia visually basically came on the knees after the these kind of the barrier imposed by the China. So these are the basically examples of the what weaponization of trade being done by the different countries, right? Now before going to the weaponization of trade or trade war, we need to discuss what is the history, right, of all these kind of the friction point in the world history, right? So if you go in the modern time, basically the Smoot-Hawley tariff led to the collapse of the global trade in 1930s. That also basically incorporated what the global recession was basically led by this tariff kind of the thing by the USA administration in 1930s. And at that time world was less connected. At this time world is more connected. That's why any trade war or tariff war, or for that matter weaponization of trade, will jeopardize the entire global economy in toto. That's why there is a matter of the concern, right? After the World War in 1980s, we saw the tariff war and tariff war between the Japan and USA. And during that time, interestingly, the current president of the Trump issued a huge advertisement in USA's Delhi that how Japan is manipulating its economic clout to deal with the USA, right? And the same USA president, then he used to be the real estate president, now he is real president of the USA, right? And they are playing with the fire, that is the trade war. Also in 2008 we have seen global financial crisis, which was basically a result of trade protectionism, and this step by the Trump government is known as the trade protectionism 2.0. Hence there is an imminent danger of global recession if the Trump administration is applying the trade war or reciprocal trade on other aspect, right? And 2018 we have seen the present USA China trade war. So these are the timeline through which we can study the past and its impact on the global economy. Accordingly, we should realign our strategy, right? Now basically the logic given by the Trump was the abuse of a drug that we call phenytoin, right? What happened? Basically, the US is quite apprehensive about the use of a drug that is again a very potent opioid, right? Opioid, which is resulting into the mass drug addiction in the US population, right? And US accused China of supplying this drug via Canada as well as via border of the Mexico, and in turn he proposed 20% tariff on the Mexico and Canadian routes and additional 10% levy against China. So that is the basically logic given by the Trump to start this tariff, because this drug is the root cause of the all the issues, and they basically first persuaded China to not manufacture these kind of drugs, and they also persuaded Canada and Mexico not to supply these kind of the drugs illegally to the USA citizens. But again, if they are not complying with these kind of the orders, Trump has no option but to impose the tariff. It is the logic given by the Trump, not my logic. Now, what could be the possible impact? So I will quote Fareed Zakaria, who's a well-known expert on the international relation. Few call him anti-Trump as well. So we are not supposed to discuss all these things, but we'll have to discuss what is the viewpoint of the Fareed Zakaria is actually true. He said that USA is shooting in its own arm, resulting in war with allies and causing up with the enemies. I will give you an example. Canada and USA are all-time friends, right? They have fought several wars together. Now they are imposing 20% tariff on the Canada. Not only that, with the Mexico they share border as well as that very good relation with other countries, for example Europe or for that matter the Britain. Still Trump is trying to impose the tariff, which will result into what? They will actually, their own allies will slide up with countries like China or Russia, right? Ultimately what will happen? USA, which is a declining superpower, such kind of the policy can actually increase the decline of the US superpower. Ultimately it will make China as a next superpower, because China will be eyeing to cater such kind of the disruption, right? That's why Fareed Zakaria says that it will be harmful for the US as well. I will also give an example. As per one of the report, there are likely chance of the increase in inflation in the USA itself in the tune of 0.5% to 0.7% because of the trade war or the tariff war. Because if USA is imposing 20% of the tariff on Canada, Canada will also impose 20% reciprocal tariff on the USA. Or if they are imposing 10% levy on the China, China will also levy 10%. Ultimately what will happen? End user like me and you or any person who is consuming anything which is made in the USA or made in the US, the Canada for that matter, will have to pay more. So it is we people which will suffer most, and that will also lead to the rise of inflation worldwide. I have given you example of the USA itself, that there are chances of increase in the inflation in the USA. Also, we have seen that in 1930s there was a tariff war, and which resulted into the great recession or great depression, right? And if the tariff war continues, if we are not coming to the negotiation table, if we are not giving concession to the other countries, it will result into the another depression, which world cannot afford as of now, because the global growth of the world is supposed to be in the tune of 3.3% only. And again, if there is a trade war resulting in the depression or the recession, the global growth will come down again, which will result in the more poverty, more inequality, and ultimately there will be more war. The economic war will result into the kinetic war, right? Also, it will lead into the drag of global growth. As I have explained you, the world is supposed to grow by 3.3%, but again, as per the estimation, it is supposed to be come down in the next few years. Also, it will be assault on the free trade regime. Basically, this free trade regime was basically proposed by the USA, and they have institutions like GATT and the WTOs and other institutions like IMF. Now, USA itself is basically stepping back from the free trade regime, right? In short term, a free trade regime can be dangerous for the economy of the USA, but in long term, such kind of regime will help the USA. That is the logic given by the most of the economics, right? That's why if USA is using or assaulting the free trade regime, it will not help USA, but ultimately it will harm the USA in the long term, right? Also, it will also lead to the realignment of the countries. Recently, we have seen the EU president visiting India. Also, we have seen Indian foreign minister is staying in the Britain, right? Not only that, we are also cozying with the China, because these kind of the disruption will lead into the realignment of the world politics, resulting into the a new world order that we can see in coming times. As rightly said by Fareed Zakaria, that the trade regime will be a war with the allies and cozying with the enemies, right? So it can result in that. Also, now the world have to look for the Atmanirbhar Vishwa, right? This Atmanirbhar Vishwa is basically derived from our own Atmanirbhar or independent or self-sufficiency idea as given by the Honorable Prime Minister of recent Modi ji. But the world have to understand the value of Atmanirbharta, and they have to have self-sufficiency in these aspects to deal with such kind of the trade or tariff war or any global kind of the recession. Now, these are the impact on the world. What will the impact on India? Again, the impact on the world will be reflected on the impact on the India. Also, for example, inflation in India is supposed to be increased if there is a tariff war or there is a heavy tariff imposed by the USA on India. For example, if you are using Apple iPhone, and if there is a tariff of 20%, you will have to pay 20% more to buy a same unit that you can buy in 20% less time, or for that matter for anything that you are buying from the USA. If there is a tariff war, there is again will have to pay more. Ultimate cost will be borne by the whom? End user, that is we people, right? Also, hardly the inflation basically was brought down in the tune of very comfort zone by the RBI. If trade war happens, it will lead to the inflation. Also, we can see the butchering of this share market because of all these things, right? So this will also result into the depletion of money from the common people like you and me. Also, if it continues, it can lead India into the recession. However, as per our own policy, since we are having a large economy, our consumption base of India is huge. There are likely chances that recession will not hit India badly, right? Like the world, Indian GDP will also take a toll if recession or any tariff is applied on India. But India will have to look for the global realignment. But for example, we will have to look for the new trade partners, Europe or Russia, Iran, even for the Canada, right? We have to look for the global realignment. Ultimately, it is the Atmanirbharta that will help us to come out from such kind of the tariff. If we are producing something at our own and we are consuming it at our own, we don't need the threat of the tariff war by any country, be it USA or anything. That is the impact of the trade war, and we'll have to understand. So way forward in that term only, right? So what is the way forward for India? So India should obviously look for the new market, because in the international relation, there's a old proverb that putting all the eggs in the same basket can be dangerous. So India's 18% of the global trade is with the USA, which is a huge, right? So we need to diversify our trade basket from the USA to the other countries, for example, the European Union, or for that matter from Russia or UK, right? These are the diversification of our trade basket. Second, India should leverage its potential market destination toward Europe, Britain and other like-minded countries, as rightly discussed. Since Jaishankar ji is in USA, the USA's scholar said that Britain is supercharging its trade relation with the India, which simply means even the countries like Britain and Europe are looking for new partners. Recently, the president of European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, was in India, right? And they have discussed the various aspects of the business with the India. So basically, it is the time of realignment, and we should look for the realignment. And India has two full options with us. First, India obviously will have to deal with the USA diplomatically, because it's one of the superpower. We can't afford to lose the USA. So negotiation should go on, but India should explore new trade partners as well, right? And the better option is the Buddha's middle path. We should balance both the USA by diplomacy and by exploring new partners into the business avenues, right? Also, as rightly said by the World Bank, we need to look into the mirror itself, right? India need to rationalize our trade policy. We need to rationalize our restriction on the FDI and all, in order to evade such kind of the pressure from the USA, right? So in conclusion, I will rather say that uncharted time needs uncharted measurements. So we'll have to look for uncharted measurement in order to deal with the tariff war or trade war, or for that matter, if it is happening, the weaponization of the trade. That's all on this topic. Hope you enjoyed it. There's a practice question. Examine the impact of reciprocal tariff on global trade dynamics, and how can India balance protectionism and free trade in its economic policy. Hope you enjoy the entire lecture. Thank you.